We live in a big world. There are more than 7.5 billion people on planet Earth. It is predicted that 7% of America is lesbian, gay, or bisexual, and 1 to 2% is transgender. So, we live in a country where a percentage of the population is not widely accepted, not treated or paid equally, and where civil rights are not the same. The time is now to make a positive change and to advocate for continued growth and equal rights for all people. It's time to take a stand in history for LGBTQ rights. At the start of World War II, American lesbian, gay, and bisexual citizens started to open up about their sexuality. They began to meet each other as soldiers, workers, and volunteers. Demand for fairness and equality for lesbian, gay, and bisexual people didn't majorly start until the 1950s, after Joseph McCarthy began investigating and firing people for their sexual orientation. In 1965, as the civil rights movement won new legislation outlawing racial discrimination, the first gay rights demonstrations started in Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., led by longtime activists Frank Kameny and Barbara Giddings. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, hundreds of support groups were created to help the LGBT community with support, shelter, and advocacy. This is an important part of history because it was in a time when identifying as lesbian, gay, or bisexual was considered a mental illness. This didn't change until 1973 when the American Psychiatric Association removed homosexuality as an illness classification in its diagnostic manuals. In the late night of June 18, 1969, a New York LGBT bar in Greenwich Village was packed when police officers entered the establishment to shut it down for serving liquor without a license. A simple closing of an establishment turned into a riot because customers and members of the community were tired of unfair treatment and prejudice from police officers. Police called for backup and the customers left quickly. The next day, more than 1,000 members of the community returned to the scene and the riot continued. These riots continued through the city and demanded fair treatment. This was one of the biggest stands in LGBTQ history and history in general because, like many previous events, it was a fight for freedom. Stonewall inspired many LGBTQ citizens to openly and proudly be who they were. Stonewall was a launching point for change in the world, which definitely would be different if it didn't happen.
Are really resilient. We came out of a lot of struggle. Stonewall, and there were queer folks prior to Stonewall, but it became like the Pride Parade and Pride Month, June, came out of Stonewall, which was an uprising in the late 60s, and that was a group of folks who were constantly told that they couldn't be who they were, that they were being policed every single night, that they weren't allowed to go out wearing the clothes that they wanted to wear, love the people that they wanted to love, identify as the people that they wanted to identify as. And when that uprising happened in the late 60s, to realize that this is a larger issue and gather together and create community. And so I think over the last 40 plus years, people have been rallying towards creating community.
Even though progress has been made with the passing of legislation for same-sex marriage, we still have a long way to go. Did you know you can still be fired for being transgender in 28 states? In the following states, you can be protected from abuse against sexual orientation, but it doesn't include protection from transgender abuse. Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Arizona, Alaska, Louisiana, Missouri, Michigan, Mississippi, Kentucky, Indiana, Alabama, Ohio, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. Plus, there's Tennessee and Arkansas who don't prohibit discrimination against transgender people. But those states also don't enforce LGBTQ protection against discrimination. That doesn't only mean you can be fired for being transgender, but you can be openly harassed and unequally treated. An estimated 1.4 million people in America are transgender. Socioeconomic status, SES, is often measured as a combination of education, income, and occupation. An article in 2007 from the American Psychology Association states, discrimination of LGBT persons in the workplace is a significant factor in the differences in socioeconomic status for LGBT persons. In many cases, discrimination against and unfair treatment of LGBT persons remains legally acceptable. Up to 68% of individuals identifying as LGBT report experiencing employment discrimination.
So what I can tell you is I work for a government contractor. And although I haven't ever been denied a pay raise or been paid unfairly based on my sexual orientation, I can tell you that for the first 6 years I was with my company, I didn't let a whole lot of people at the company know I was gay. I was scared that my job would be in jeopardy. I would somehow be branded, or it would somehow stunt my ability to receive pay raises or to get to the next level of management if that's what I wanted.
One instance in one job where I was treated unfairly, and it was pretty bad. I was working at an oceanfront hotel, and I was working as a customer service clerk, checking people in and checking them out and answering questions and whatnot. We did have a person that came in, and they were obviously of a homosexual nature, and they were asking about gay clubs, and I gave them, I guess, a reference, if you will. And then my staff and my boss found out that I was gay, and then within, I would say, probably a week, I found myself promoted to a new job that put me in a closet behind the workplace. And promotion did not come with a raise. It did not come with a different job title. It was simply moving me off the front desk into a closet where it would be for the next 3 months before I could say it anymore and just quit. After that, once they found out that I was gay, everything changed. Everything changed, and that was really horrible. I believe that was the only time that I was ever, I guess, looked down upon in the workforce.
RAND National Gay and Lesbian Task Force says lack of acceptance and fear of persecution force many LGBT youth to leave their homes and live in unstable and uncertain housings or on the streets. The consequences of youth homelessness have many implications for LGBT youth. Studies from the American Psychological Association reveal the following. LGBT youth experience homelessness at a disproportionate rate. Studies indicate that between 20 and 40% of all homeless youth identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender upon coming out to their parents. Up to 50% of teens report a negative reaction, and 26% report being kicked out of their homes. Homeless LGBT youth are without economic support, often engage in drug use, risky sexual behaviors, and some develop mental health disorders. For these reasons, LGBT youth are often at the lower rungs of the SES ladder and have greater chances of remaining at the lower SES ladder in the future. Without the few LGBTQ centers, then this problem would be majorly worse. In my lifetime, I am proud to say I've gotten to see change and progress in the way that the LGBTQ community is accepted and treated. I have witnessed the national passing of same-sex marriage, but there is always room and need for improvement. I got the opportunity to talk with Greene County Recorder of Deeds Cheryl Dawson Spalding about same-sex marriage statistics. So we're coming into 2017. So how many marriages have you licensed in the 2016 year, and how many of those were same-sex?
Okay. The same-sex marriage took place on June 26th of 2015, and in that year, we took in 91 same-sex marriage licenses. There were 28 male, and 63 female. Total licenses to same-sex and others, just altogether, 2,428 licenses. And then so far in 2016, we've issued 125 same-sex licenses. 37 of those were male, 88 were female. And right now, as of the 29th of December, we've got a total of 2,472.
American civil rights is defined as the rights of individuals to receive equal treatment and to be free from unfair treatment or discrimination in a number of settings, including education, employment, housing, and more. Based on certain legally protected characteristics, our country is founded on a rich and diverse population of cultures, ethnicities, and beliefs. We are each unique in our being, but in the end, we all have the same wishes to be accepted and loved for who we are. This is my stand. Will you stand with me?